A feminist professor says that heterosexuality is tragic. Does that then mean that non-heterosexual relationships are comedy? Farce, maybe? I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the country. Today, we start with a little humor, because whenever you put the word campus feminist in front of somebody, you just gotta laugh. Today, we start with a California professor who claims in a new study that heterosexuality and heterosexual relationships are the bane of all evil because, quote, inherent inequality. Seriously. When you got a man and a woman in a relationship, because you have a man who's obviously a power-mad freak and a woman who's obviously a victim, heterosexuality is inherently unequal. And if you had two guys in a relationship, that's inherently equal, or two women, and that basically all men make women miserable.
Okay. Well, this is coming out of University of California, Riverside, gender and sexuality studies professor Jane Ward. And she was featured in an Insider article titled, "Why Heterosexual Relationships Are So Bad for Us," according to a sex researcher. But of course, it's not just stopping at an article on Insider. She wrote a book about it, and that's called The Tragedy of Heterosexuality. It's 216 pages. If you'd like a copy of it, you can go to Amazon.com or the New York University Press, because that's where they print such filth.
You know what?
And
if I printed a book that said homosexual is tragedy, there would be no Amazon book allowed. No. There would be no university bookstore.
No one would publish it to begin with.
That's right.
All right. It is $26.95 if you'd like to purchase it. And according to Bitch Magazine, this book is a loving...
Is that like a dog? Is that for dog lovers?
I don't know. Maybe you have a copy.
Bitch Magazine.
This book is a loving lesbian intervention, a defamiliarized look at what we've come to expect from heterosexuality. Now, just so you know, Ward is also the author of Not Gay, Sex Between Straight White Men, Respectability Queer, Diversity Culture in LGBT Activist Organizations. So she comes with credentials, clearly, to say how tragic
none of them have anything to do with anything
heterosexuality is. Yes, but according to Ward, she says it really looks like straight men and women don't like each other very much.
It looks like how methodical and research driven.
It really looks
like. It sure looks that way, doesn't it, honey?
There was no honey that was mentioned there.
Honey.
That women spend so much time complaining about men, and we still have so much evidence of misogyny or women-hating behavior.
So women spend a lot of time bitching, since the word has been, I'm just talking about the magazine. Women spend so much time bitching about men, that proves that heterosexual relationships are nasty.
No, they're tragic.
Tragically nasty.
From an LGBT perspective, Ward says, being straight looks actually very tragic. I'm glad she has her scientific hat on.
Is it fair to say
her
that
research, from her perspective, it looks tragic.
So is what she's saying is that from the perspective of LGBTQ, we should take pity on heterosexuality?
I did not read into that.
We should stop demonizing it because it's so hard to do?
You should contact her and ask her these
Jane
very
Ward?
specific questions. She says, I think in some ways the pandemic, now let's talk, hey, good thing for the pandemic, snaps for the pandemic, is revealing the tragedy of heterosexuality to people who might not have otherwise paid attention to it. Then the article continues on, and it lists Ward's reasons for being outspoken against heterosexuality, which, again, you can look in her book for $26.95 plus tax. But, that's capitalism, and she's probably against that too. Anyway, one individual stated in the book, her actual book, that she finds it depressing that her friends put up with this from men. She says, I find it depressing to see what my straight female friends put up with regarding treatment from men. I really sympathize with these women, but at the same time, it makes me feel alienated from them.
You do realize, right, that even happily married women bitch about their husbands?
Yeah.
I mean, this happens all the time. I mean, men who are happily married, absolutely, exactly.
Women.
Of course they do.
Okay,
this
here's
is perfectly
the deal.
normal.
if heterosexuality is so tragic and you're complaining so much about it, do you realize that without it, you wouldn't be here? Can we just go to the base biology of this?
We could take care of that in the future in test tubes. The bottom line, though, is that...
But Jane Ward would not be here right now without some heterosexuality going on.
It is, and look, I have been friends with gay couples. I know everybody out there has friends who are gay couples or have been around gay couples. They do the exact same thing. Gay men bitch about their boyfriends all the time. Lesbians, even more so, constantly bitch about their partners. It's endless. I mean, but now if I were to say that from a heteronormative perspective, when heterosexual people look at gay cultures, they see them as tragic. Because when I hear my gay friends bitch about their boyfriends over and over again, it just makes me sad. I would, of course, be called a homophobe for saying that.
Yes, well, according to Ward, as she told Insider, I think that if men could recognize that equity and feminism are actually really central to a healthy and happy relationship, if that's something they want, then they might be able to move further in that direction.
You know what? How about you teach women the same thing? That men aren't taught, but you're
in the name of equity.
Yeah, you want it both ways,
not.
Jane Ward. You want men to learn the lesson of equity, all the while blaming men as toxic for the problem.
She says, I wrote the book version because I love straight people and because the research on heterosexual marital satisfaction over the life course shows that straight couples are struggling to balance work and family obligations, and this leads to frustration and resentment for many straight women in particular.
But here's the thing, it does the same for gay couples. You're telling me gay couples aren't somehow being gay, somehow having the same sexual organs means you no longer struggle to balance work and relationship? Why? Because you can wear the same clothes out of the same closet? Is that why?
Even that you wouldn't.
I mean,
no, that makes absolutely no sense.
None of it makes any sense.
Because it's actually a slap in the face to any gay couple being like that with this balance for work and family obligations. It's almost as if they don't have any of it. To even they don't have to worry about it because they don't have it.
What a poor researcher she is.
She's not a researcher.
She's not. Because what she's talking about is a human problem, not a male or female problem. Relationships are difficult, and they're difficult for people regardless of the gender in the situation. Just because you're gay, they're two men living together, don't mean you're not balancing the same issues.
So here's a little ditty out of Harvard. We've recently heard about what's happening over in England at the Brighton and Sussex Hospital Trust system, and how now if you give birth, the midwives over there not say, oh, okay, it's time to breastfeed. You have to say, oh, it's time to chest feed, because that's where we are. Well, at Harvard, back here in the U.S., they're also being dumb. And they're saying that you need to call women birthing people, because not everyone who actually gives birth is a woman.
What if I'm a feminist woman who ain't gonna have no man's baby? I ain't birthing nothing. You saying I ain't a woman?
You're also not from the South.
If the midwives of England are so progressive, why do they still call themselves wives? Isn't that derogatory, old-fashioned marital attitudes? Shouldn't they be the, instead of the midwives, what should they be? The mid-singles? The mid-manless? I mean, wife here has a very specific connotation that is very gender-driven. If they're so woke in England that they don't want to use breastfeeding to offend anybody, how dare they call themselves wives? What if there are women midwives, and there certainly are, who aren't married?
Well, the two people who actually put out the guide, one's a guy, one's a girl, and they're both feminists, and they were working on all the different language for all the different things. So, patience, young one here.
Physician, heal thyself. Fake physician, heal thyself.
Well, we're gonna focus here on the States, because we care about the United States, not England.
I care about
fought
England.
A revolution. Anyway, at the end of 2020, Harvard Medical School said that you better best be referring to women giving birth as birthing people.
Not pregnant, not women, birthing people.
Birthing people. And then they were criticized for it. I wonder why. And of course, they doubled down. And they said it wasn't at all to erase or to dehumanize women. no. This is all about being for you, women. There's their little tweet.
By the way,
Which actually was originally in November, and then they reported about back in December.
Is it my imagination, or does that collection of women have absolutely no diversity? With one impossible, that's the least diverse collection of people you could possibly get together. And why is nobody angry about that? See, that right there, where almost everybody is the same race, with one exception. That it would be categorized as lack of diversity in any other circumstance. But because they're undiverse in the same way, that makes them diverse.
Yeah, so I have not asked them to identify themselves, so
That's
I
right,
will
they
not
probably
assume.
Half of them, I'm sure. Do they identify as birthing people?
I do not know. I have not asked them. But according to what they said, at least there, they were tweeting about maternal justice. It was a maternal justice panel for the Harvard Medical Postgraduate and Continuing Education account. And as the tweet said, globally, ethnic minority pregnant and birthing people suffer worse outcomes and experiences during and after pregnancy and childbirth.
May I point out that if they're part of a maternal justice club, they are already excluding paternal people? That before, again, you start lecturing us on what we have to call pregnant women, maybe you should, just like midwives should identify what they mean by wives, which is very exclusionary. To be a maternal justice seeker is to be seeking justice for women. That's what the word maternal means, mothers. And we know, as everybody knows, as you know, right, according to the new law, that paternal people can be maternal people too. So I think you need to get your linguistic houses in order before you start wasting our time with this kind of nonsense.
And so then, as you saw in that follow-up tweet that they had, the webinar panelists used the term birthing person to include those who identify as non-binary or transgender, because not all who give birth identify as women or girls.
Or maternal.
Hopefully none of them are
wives.
girls. They should be women, hopefully, but that's just anyway. We understand the reactions to this terminology and in no way meant for it to erase or dehumanize
but yes, you did.
Women.
You did want to erase the word. You erased the word women from the birthing process. You did it. You can't say you didn't intend to do it because you did it.
You know, and then when we have actual women out there who are actually writing about things that matter involving females, and they're coming from actual professors, of course Facebook will ban it.
Yep.
And any other social media platform or anyone who basically just is so woke that they don't need to do anything that they don't want to. The actual females and femininity are banned, and Facebook and Instagram, because Facebook owns Instagram, have removed posts advertising a best-selling book that criticizes the toxic femininity and Marxist roots of radical feminism, claiming the post had obviously violated the company's commerce policies. There you see it. The book is called The Anti-Mary Exposed, Rescuing the Culture from Toxic Femininity. It was written by Carrie Gress, who's a PhD, she's a Catholic professor at Pontifex University, and oh my gosh, she's a mother. She says she's a mother of 5.
Not a birthing person?
Nope, not a birthing
person.
person.
So what you have here is a typical American woman. Go back and show the picture, please. Here you have a female author who actually explains in her book that there is such a thing as toxic femininity. Duh. Anytime men are behaving bad in the name of masculinity, we call it toxic masculinity. But now comes a woman who says, hey, anybody who's ever been married knows there is such a thing as toxic femininity. It oozes from every pore of your relationship at times. It's there. It's as real as anything else is real. And yet, along comes a woman who happens to not be a feminist. She coins a term. She explains very carefully what toxic femininity is, and places like Facebook ban her.
Yeah, so the book, it was released over a year ago. It's still in the top 8,000, which, I mean, whatever, on Amazon. And they have 423 or so reviews with an average of 4.7 out of 5 stars. So it's a well-reviewed book. But according to Facebook, the book did not comply with Facebook's commerce policies because listings may not promote the buying, selling, or use of adult products. And that so because that book got put out, they're claiming like, oh, she's trying to sell the book.
It's an adult product? What does that mean?
Well, just listings in general cannot promote buying, selling, or use of adult products. So that's the terminology they're using. It was banned on Instagram, obviously, as I said, because that's owned by Facebook. And they have these repeated glitches that seem to be happening on Amazon when they're trying to sell the books. Like, I don't know what's happening. Oh, put your conspiracy theory hats on, people. And the removal of buttons so for you to even be able to purchase the book. So all of a sudden there's the book, but can't purchase it. What's happening? I don't know. According to Dr. Gress, she says, I think we will continue to see more of this and a real pattern will emerge. And she says that people have been reaching out to her in support. They've even been moved to purchase the book, basically only because it's being censored. That's the way you beat the system. When they try and come at you,
assuming
they censor you.
You have the ability to buy it.
Yeah. She says people want to do something, anything to fight this big tech monopoly that we all feel like we are living under. So it's a great moment for people with fresh ideas to start building. So if you have a book idea and it goes against the woke scolds, just go for it. See what happens. You might get people buying it simply because it's against the woke scolds.
It is disgusting when you think about it. You could actually create a book and call it Toxic Masculinity, where you impugn all men collectively for what some men are guilty of. No biasing, stereotyping, it's all there. Sexism, bigotry. Then you do exactly the same thing from the perspective of a woman, and they cancel it.
Well, heterosexuality is tragic, so you can do that too. It's time for some real education, and you know what? It's more time for some Van Eyck here on Van Eyck Week on the Dr. Duke Show. So, Dr. Duke, take it away.
Yeah, Jan van Eyck is the study of our 5 instant classics for this week. He's a great Flemish painter, born about 1390, died about 1441. One of the first major masters to use oil paints for all sorts of beautiful ways. There on the left, you can sort of see him. He's the very confident-looking artiste in the elaborate red turban. And I want to talk to you today about his Ghent Altarpiece. It probably is the most famous, most impressive altarpiece in the history of the world. It's a huge piece that was meant to be set on an altar when Mass was not being said. And if you take a look at the image here, there's what it looks like. It is about 15 feet, I believe, 11 by 15. It's huge. And all of these absolutely gorgeous pieces of the altarpiece are joined together with wood by joiners, carpenters. They can move. You can fold it up in different ways. You can reveal certain pictures and cover up others as you want to. But this is the Ghent Altarpiece. It is an absolute amazing masterpiece of Western art. It's one of the most valuable and desired pieces of art in the history of the world. And of course, you can see God there at the center of the image in the top. And of course, this is going to be celebrating the Mass. It's an altarpiece for a reason. It sits on an altar when it's not in use, the altar. And so it shouldn't surprise us that the far right and the far left wings of the Ghent Altarpiece at the top, you see 2 naked figures who are obviously immediately recognizable. They are Adam and Eve. And it makes sense that this whole altarpiece should be framed by Adam and Eve. Well, why? Well, because Adam and Eve's sin is what has to be remedied in Christ's death. The Holy Communion that Roman Catholics believe in, where bread and wine become the body and blood of Christ through the sacramental miracle of the priest, all of that is part of the remediation of sin. Christ had to give up his body, shed his blood, so that the sins of the world, literally the sins that were introduced into the world by Adam and Eve, could be compensated for, grace and mercy. And so go back to the picture there. You see these beautiful renderings of Adam and Eve, and there they are. I mean, Adam, they're both, obviously this is the moment after they have been discovered, they have eaten the fruit together. In fact, Eve holds in her right hand a citron, probably a little mini lemon or a citrus fruit, an orange. This was much more likely the fruit that medieval and Renaissance people would have associated with the Garden of Eden. The idea of the apple really didn't become popular until the 17th century when the English poet John Milton made his Paradise Lost, his poem, long epic poem, Paradise Lost, revolve around the eating of the apple by Adam and Eve. But this is 250 years earlier. And so the citron, you can see it in her hand, she's holding up that which they have eaten, and she's covering her private parts out of shame. Adam is covering his private parts. The fact that they now realize that they are naked could only have taken place after their eyes have been opened to sin, which is what happened when they ate the fruit. And it really is a gorgeous picture. It's a very stark, compelling image of them. They look very much like a Flemish couple would have looked in that time, the early 15th century. They are stylized in many ways. Adam is stepping forward. He's got his right hand overly. How long is that arm to be able to hold that fig leaf over his private parts? And then the looks on the faces, and then you can see an almost one would think almost gravid Eve. Carrying that that very robust figure, and the elongated anatomy again. If you look at the right foot that you can barely see behind the left, and you look at the swell of her belly, literally her belly would have to come down mid-thigh. And so what we have here is a extended view of shame. And that's what frames the altarpiece. If you take one step back again to the previous picture, you can see how Adam on the left and Eve on the right frame what's happening, because what's happening in the Ghent Altarpiece is the consequences of sin, ushered in by those two framing figures, Adam and Eve, was going to be overcome on the altar. And we're going to spend the next 2 days. The first day we looked at the Annunciation by Van Eyck. Second day we looked at the Arnold Feeney wedding poetry. Today and the next 2 days, to make a week, we will look at the Ghent Altarpiece. Now that we know what the purpose of Adam and Eve, that naked couple framing the picture is, tomorrow we'll tackle some of the other symbols in the painting.
All right, just a quick reminder to please download our new Freedom Project Media app. We've got a lot of great content available, including 17 new weekly shows. 17 people, we're busy over here. So you should take advantage and watch them all. Now, all you have to do is download the Freedom Project app in your app store and make sure, obviously, you allow for notifications so you know when those 17 new shows are coming out. And if you're a fan of the show, please consider a one-time tax-deductible donation to support our little Patriot Club and keep us going over here. And we're going to send you our signature red tumbler that says, "Freedom never tasted so good," as just a little thank you. So all you have to do to sign up is visit patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us. Now we want to take just a little bit of your time to show some love to those Patriot Club members who've already become members, just like you're going to do right now. And today we're going to give a shout out to Nikki from Cannon Falls, Minnesota. Nikki, how's it going? Thank you for supporting us.
Nikki, don't lose that number. It's the only one you want. And that wraps up this show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay barky, my friends.